Alright, I'm the flatratemaster, and today we're going to talk about getting into scoping without breaking the bank. Now, I've been a huge advocate for techs that do diagnostics to have oscilloscopes. And if you don't understand what an oscilloscope is, basically it looks at voltage over time. That's the basics. But you can do so much with it. You can do relative compression tests. You can do in-cylinder testings, which is more advanced. Injectors, ignition. There's so much information you can glean with a scope. The biggest problem is, one, the economy kind of sucks and buying tools is expensive. And traditionally, scopes have been quite expensive. You know, the Pico scope, the ATS scope, which is even more expensive. Snap-on scopes, even more expensive. By the way, please don't buy this for a scope. It's not worth it for the scope you get. Now keep in mind, I have this. I use it a lot for just basic scoping. And I'm generally not using it for like checking if an engine's out of time. I generally pull out my Pico scope for that. Now what I want to talk about is the more budget options out there. Now I'm holding a launch scope, and trade secret, it's a Hantek scope. A Hantek scope can be bought for a couple $100 on Amazon. Is the U-scope from AES Wave. Now I'll put a link to these in the description. The Hantek scope on Amazon will be an affiliate link, and the link to the U-scope will not be an affiliate link. It'll just be a link. So click away. Now I don't have a U-scope here because I actually don't own one, but I have actually used it. It's a pretty neat little scope. It's a single channel scope. Gets you into scoping. You can do a lot of basic, and it allows you to get in at a very low price point. I mean, you can hook a low amp probe to it, basic leads. It's just an awesome starter scope. A Hantek scope is a nice step up from that. You can get it in 2-channel, 4-channel. I saw an 8-channel, though I don't know anything about that one. But you can get high amp probes from AES Wave. You can get low amp probes from AES Wave. They have some really good ones at really affordable prices. That's why I'm pushing you there, not to an Amazon store. But for a couple $100, you can have a 4-channel scope that'll do really good. Now, is it as precise? Do you have as much software features as a Pico scope or an ATS scope? No, but it's a pretty powerful budget scope. Both these options are just great options if you're looking to get into scoping, and you should if you do diagnostics. To give it a good example, you can sit there and monitor a crank sensor that you've got a crank sensor code on, waiting for it to replicate to see if the crank sensor actually drops out or you have a different problem, which is kind of common. I've had many false crank sensor fault codes stored because the car died. You know, fuel pump, stuff like that. Or in some cases, like the VVT not locking correctly, causing the engine to slightly be out of time, causing it to stall, etc., etc. But it allows you to prove that it wasn't the crank sensor, or prove that it was the crank sensor. That's the value of a scope. It allows you to precisely tell what is actually wrong with the car instead of going off a code. You know, that whole testing and not shotgunning parts. So I wanted to bring this video to kind of push people to get into scopes. They're not really that expensive anymore. It's awesome that you can get into scoping with a cheap laptop, a cheap Hantek box or something like that, and get to scoping. Now there's tablet space like the MSIG. Those are awesome as well, but they're a higher price point. You know, a lot of people have a halfway decent Windows laptop they can use with this. I mean, heck, you can get a long USB and run it to your shop computer. Just for giggles, I've thought about putting Pico software on my Snap-on. I haven't, but I could. So get out there, get scoping. There's tons of budget options to get into using a digital oscilloscope. And the best way to learn how to use a scope is using it. I will put links to some basic courses I did years ago. Took a long time. They were difficult to film, edit, etc. So I haven't done any more. But I will link those, and they're just basic videos that will help you when you start scoping. Plus, there's tons of other videos out there from Scanner Danner, etc. So get scoping. As always, thanks for watching. I am the Flat Rate Master.